Let's start to build 2-5-1 progressions in minor keys on the guitar. For this lesson, let's focus on 2-5-1s that occur with the root on the 5th string. So if our root is on the 5th string, our second degree is going to be on the 5th string. Now if we had a 2-5-1 to C major, it looked like this. And that gave us a 2 minor, 5 dominant, 1 major. Now, if we are going to C minor as opposed to C major, then the qualities of all three chords change. Instead of having a 2 minor, we have a 2 minor 7 flat 5. We have a dominant chord with some kind of flat 9 or sharp 9. And then a 1 that is now minor. Okay, so our first voicing, I'm going to suggest this. D minor 7 flat 5, which is our 2 minor 7 flat 5. Our dominant chord with a flat 9, in this case G7 flat 9, to C minor. Okay, so. Let's take a look how this was built up. We had the root, the flat 5, the flat 7, and the flatted third of our 2 minor 7 flat 5 chord. Then every note stayed the same, except the flat 7 moves down a half step to become the third. So now we had the 5, the flat 9, the major third, and the flatted 7. Right? So this is a good G7 flat 9, or 5 chord, or dominant chord flat 9, with the root being right here. So this is technically a rootless voicing. Then we're going to C minor. Root, 5, flat 7, flatted third. So. Okay, so make sure you can do that in other keys. Let's say you're in D minor, it'd be E half diminished, A7 flat 9, D minor. Okay, so make sure you can do that up and down the fretboard with your roots of your 2 chord and your 1 chord on the 5th string, and this will be a good plug and play voicing for that. Now when you see a dominant chord that says flat 9, it's suggesting the diminished scale, and that's exactly what we got, or at least implied, with this voicing. The other big thing on minor 2-5-1s is to have a 5 chord that has the quote-unquote altered sound, which is built off of the altered scale, which in some places is called the Superlocrian or diminished whole tone scale. All right. Now the difference in sound and voicing that we need to know at this point is that if it has that, the chord symbol says G7 sharp 9 or G7 altered or G7 plus 5, which the plus 5 is the same as the flat 6, so that could also be called flat 13. So if you see something that says G7 flat 9, it's suggesting diminished. But if you see something that says G7 sharp 9, G7 plus 5, G7 flat 13, it's explicitly requesting the quote-unquote altered sound. And really, when you look at the notes between the altered and the half-whole diminished scale, the really only difference is what kind of 5 and what kind of 6 do you have. So we're going to make our voicing here that's going to have that sharp 5, also known as a flat 6 or flat 13, on top. So we're going to do our D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 plus 5, also known as G7 flat 13 or G7 altered, and then we're going to resolve to minor. Now here, for the resolve to C minor, I like the very first voicing we learned, which was our minor 7 voicing with the root on the 5th string. The way that these notes move smoothly down, I like a little bit more than. Now, can you do that? Sure. It's just a matter of, artistic decision. I think for me, might be just a little bit more smooth under general conditions, but there might be a time when you want to go to the other one, and feel free to do that. So in review, we've had 2 flavors of 5 chord that are very important. We had our first flavor, which was the diminished sound, which is going to be expressed as a dominant 7 flat 9, and that's going to be 2 minor, 5 dominant with a flat 9 to 1 minor. And then the other version that was equally important is the quote-unquote altered dominant, which again in context would be 2 minor 7 flat 5, 5 dominant flat 13, or 5 dominant sharp 5, or 5 dominant quote-unquote alt, then 1 minor again. All right, now when you have a 1 minor, sometimes you don't have to play that flatted 7. If that minor chord is acting as a 1 chord, a lot of times a minor 6 would be a good sound, or a minor major sound would be good. Now a minor 6 sound is just the root, flat 3, 6. Okay, now this voicing has the 9 on top. So you see how we had root, flat 3, flat 7, 9. If we just move that flat 7 down to 6, we have a nice minor sound. And as when the minor is working as a tonic, a lot of times you'll see, oh, D minor 7 flat 5, G7 with some alterations, and then it'll go to C minor, but it won't say C minor 7, it'll just say C minor. Well, that's a good time to use this, and this is a nice voicing. So in context, D minor 7 flat 5, G7 flat 9 to C minor with the natural 6 and 9. So make sure you can do that. Now here it is with the altered dominant, minor 7 flat 5, G7 altered to C minor with the natural 6 and no 7. Let's do the same thing but without the root. Now when we did our 2-5-1s to major, we made sure that we could do 2-note versions and 3-note versions, as well as our 4-note versions. One should really be able to do the same thing here. Now the thing I like about this voicing is that our 3rds and 7s stay on the same string. So here's our 2 half diminished with just the root, the flatted 7 and the flatted 3rd, going to the root, 3rd, and the flatted 7, to the root, flatted 7, flatted 3rd. So in context, so that's a 3-note version. Okay. Now it doesn't give you all the information because again it was a 2 minor 7 flat 5, and that flat 5 stays the same to become the flat 9. So if we're going to add this extra note right here, which is going to be, we had the root that we're now not playing, we had the flat 5 which we are going to add, so we're going to have, then we just go to here for our dominant 7 flat 9 chord, then we go to our 1 minor. So in context, that's a very serviceable voicing. And again, in the context of a group, when you've got a bass player, drummer, and piano player, doing a rootless voicing is a very good idea because again, when you start playing the root, it's conflicting both in range and rhythm with the bassist. Okay, so we have our 4-note version, we have our 2-note version, we have our 3-note version, and do that up and down the fretboard so that you have your 2-5-1s in minor with our with the root of the 2 on the 5th string. Let's do the same rootless 3-note voicing, but with the 5 chord having that altered sound. D minor 7 flat 5, then the G7 with the plus 5 or flat 13 to C minor. So now let's do that with the same thing, but with the minor 6 sound. And that sounds very good too. So make sure you can do those voicings as well.